than give a lengthy introduction to Brenda Muhammad, which would tell her story for her, I'm going to simply ask her to tell the story and to kind of get us started in grounding us in her experience. But before she does that, would you join me in warmly welcoming to St. Luke's our wonderful friend, Brenda Muhammad. Thank you, my friend. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Good morning and happy Sunday.
Good morning and happy Sunday to you.
And happy Gun Violence Prevention Month.
Yes.
It is. It's a pleasure to be here. I was excited when I received the telephone call from Reverend Dr. Ed. And I'm calling him Reverend Dr. Ed. That's the name that I'm.
That's fine. I respond to anything, including honey.
Oh, honey. Thank you. I'm glad to be here. And my story begins 30 years ago. I lost a 16-year-old son. A 16-year-old son who was murdered, shot in the back of the head by a young man who lived across the street from us. But let me tell you the most devastating piece. The gun that he killed my son with, he stole out of my house. So, if you don't mind, brother, stand up.
Yes.
So, it was a gun that the children had found in a playground, a makeshift playground. It wasn't really a park. And they brought it to me, and I caught myself hiding it until the next week so that I could give it to a detective that I knew who happened to be out of town at the time. Because I was really afraid to turn it into anyone because, hey, these were young black boys who had found a weapon. And if they turned it in, you don't know what had happened with the weapon or what had been done before. And so I was afraid for them to do it. So I called my friend, and said, hey, the boys found this. I need to make sure you get it or whatever. So anyway, I caught myself putting it out. And the kid who killed my son had a jacket, had taken my son's jacket or borrowed it, and I told my son to get it back. And anyway, the kid was he wanted this jacket so much, it meant so much to him for peer pressure, for image, the jacket. And I had one for him. I had bought one for him. It was in the trunk of my car. And I was going to give it to him that Christmas. But anyway, this happened. And I have to tell you, it was the most devastating thing that could ever happen. Has anyone in here ever lost a child to violence? Oh, my heart goes out to you and your family. It's devastating. And I know this is going to probably stir you up a bit because it happens with us. We're a member of a club that we never want anybody else to be a member of. People tell you they're sorry, and they tell you they sympathize, and they do. They really do as much as they can, but they have no idea the pain that you feel when Mother's Day comes. Mm-hmm. And one of your children is missing, or holidays, and you have all your family there, but you know that one person is missing. When you miss those steps that used to come into the door the way that they did the things that they do. But with friends like Ann Kramer and Melita and others, many of you in this room who supported me along the way, I found another direction. There were those who said to me, you must do something with this. You cannot let this be in vain. You've got to turn this into something positive for others. I found myself fighting that fight against guns. I would watch television and I would see them shooting, and just to see someone shoot on the television frightened me to death. If you've been in a car accident before. You know what it's like. You know, you in a car accident and someone hurt you pretty badly, or it was a bad or horrific accident. You're afraid for a long time. You don't want to drive, or you wonder what will happen next. That's what it's somewhat what it's like to experience someone being shot or you losing someone to gun violence. Well, this kid shot him in the back of the head in front of the school that I was PTA president of, which is across the street from our house. So living with that every day and just thinking, because you think, what could make a person do this? What could make a person shoot another person? And especially in the back of the head. I mean, you know, that's just constantly on your mind. So my fight started in the beginning, the very beginning. It was to fight against guns, you know. But I didn't know really what I was fighting against guns, except that I knew my child had been killed by a gun. And then later, in the years to come, I would say about 10 years later, I eased up a bit from the fight against guns, that people couldn't have guns, because I began to see things in the community that were happening. And you go, well, is it right? Is it right to tell people that they can't have guns when they're trying to protect their families? You know, I think about our schools, and we hear about the horrific things that are happening in our schools and the number of children that are being murdered in our schools. We think about our churches, where individuals are being killed in our churches. These are things that we never experienced before. So what do? Do we continue to fight against guns? And I'm not pro-guns, and I'm not saying that we should have guns. I'm not saying we should or we shouldn't. But I am saying one thing. The one thing I've learned over my years of doing this work. If we're going to have guns, people need to be educated and they need to be responsible. You shouldn't be able to find a gun in a park or in a car or just anywhere. You shouldn't be able to just find a gun. If you're going to own a gun, you need to be responsible. That should be a law. If we have cars and we are responsible for what we do with our cars, in order to get a car, first of all, you got to have a driver's license. So if you're going to get a gun, why can't you be required to have education about owning a gun? If you get a car, you're going to have to register it. It has to be registered to whoever the owner is. Same thing with a gun. Why can't folk that have guns make sure that they are registered? To have a car, they're not going to let you, if you're blind, they're not going to let you just drive like that, right? But if you got a gun, if you have mental health issues, serious mental health issues, you shouldn't be able to get a gun. I mean, it's just responsibility. And that's all that many of us are asking for, but then you have those who hear us say this act as if we're against guns. It's not. We just said common sense. Use common sense. These are lives that are being affected every day. The program that I started was mothers of murdered sons and daughters. So many people were affected that we had 5,000 people the day we announced the initiation of the program. Immediately. I mean, people called from across the country. That led to us getting funding for victims of violence. So we have a program here called Atlanta Victim Assistance, which started under the Metropolitan Atlanta Crime Commission. We're housed in municipal court. So if you know of anybody that's been a victim, or they have family members who have been victims of violence, any kind of violence, but we have homicide support groups, please let us know. And if anybody needs a number, I'll be happy to give it to you before we leave here, and I'll leave it with Reverend Dr. Ed. But I don't want to walk away from here with you thinking that I am against guns or fighting this fight against guns. I am fighting for common sense, responsibility. I'm not going to tell you if you've got violence in the community and somebody breaks in your house and tries to harm your children that you can't do anything to protect them. You have a right to protect your family. You have a right to protect your loved ones. But how you choose to do that, that's up to you. But if you have a gun, please be responsible, with that weapon, because they kill. And one of the things that we know from our commandments is, thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not kill. So it's up to us, It's up to each individual to make the decision that they have to make.
Thank you very much. Yes. Yes. So I have 2 or 3 follow-up questions from me, and we can sit, or you can.
Stand.
Okay, but I like the fact that you stand. And then could we? A mic, stick mic. Not right now, but in just a second. And we're going to ask you to ask some questions. But before we get there, I want to go back and just underscore some things that I heard just now. Okay. Very, very, very inspiring and very wise. So this is going to be a combination of what you just said and then what you said on the phone when you and I had a conversation over the phone. But that in addition to the devastation, the emotional and spiritual devastation, that one of your first kind of steps and positions was just to get rid of all guns. Yeah. Because you want to get rid of absolutely everything that caused you such loss. And then you realize, and as you've been through this with other mothers and fathers, you've come to recognize, it's almost like you reminded me of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross in terms of the stages, that a stage of losing somebody to gun violence is to just want to get rid of them all in addition to the devastation. And then, as I remember you're saying now, that there was a next step saying that reality was that certain people feel that they need to be able to defend themselves by having guns, which means that we're not going to get rid of guns. That's a reality. And so you had to step into that position on your journey of reality. And then you had to find out kind of where you stood, which has to do with the licensing and the education and the training, and about gun violence prevention. And then there was this beautiful flowering of your wanting to be of service to other people who were in the same situation. So my question is, if you don't mind, I know you're a person of deep spirituality. When I asked Brenda Muhammad if she could come, she says, well, as long as it's early enough for me to get to my own church service. So I said, we're going to be at 9 o'clock.
It's my pastor's anniversary.
It's your pastor's anniversary.
Yes.
Well, please give your pastor all of our love.
I will.
And so thank God we were meeting early enough in the summertime for her to accomplish having her cake and eating it too. So knowing you to be a spiritual person, I would just love to hear a little bit about your spiritual autobiography. I hear the kind of the public things that were going on. If you could go and talk to us a little bit about the inner things that were going on in your own spirituality to lead you from one place to the next.
Well, let me tell you, my spirituality was truly questioned during that time. I have to tell you, was it Joe?
Yes.
I cried out. I wondered, why would you do this to me? Why would you take my child?
We're with you.
because I had been so faithful.
Mm. Mm.
I thought I had been faithful.
Mm.
I went to church. I tithed. I worked in the community. I was a divorced mom with 3 children, doing the best that I could. I was whipping the money here and there, busting out of meetings to go pick them up. Sometimes they were left, the last children to leave the baseball field, football field. Couldn't understand it. And I really wanted to go with him. They could have dug a grave right next to him and just put me in it, because that's how I felt. And then I was angry with God, very angry. And I have to tell you who helped me at that moment. I don't know if you all remember Olivet Allison with Carrie Steele Pitts home. I know you do, Malia, probably. But Olivet Allison, who was the director of Carrie Steele Pitts Home, which is the oldest orphanage in the country. She called me late one night. It was very, 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 very late. And she talked to me about Job. And it was just the words that she imparted. And God sends people into your life at certain times. We don't know why, but he does. And I remember my 23rd Psalm. And one day I found myself just repeating it, just over and over. And it is one of those that I use when I go to speak. Thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry. I just it happens occasionally, right? It happens, and you just can't control it. So that helped, but my church helped also. My members of my church were so good to me, so good. They were there, and not having family here helped, a lot. But then I began to see problems with my son, who is now 45, but at that time he was 17, 16, something like that. And my daughter, who were very angry about what had happened. And I realized that people were coming to support me and give me love and support, but they forgot about the children.
Mm.
And they were best friends.
Mm.
And that happens a lot, and it's one of those things that we try to tell families. Don't forget about the children.
Mm.
They've lost someone also. So and there's anger. And it plays out in schools. I see that's one of the reasons I ran for the school board. Because I knew that there were children in our schools who had some problems that were not being addressed, and everybody was expecting the norm from these children, but they were not normal. They had some issues that they were dealing with that nobody was recognizing. But it was my church. I have to tell you, it was my church and the folk in my church who helped to lift me up. And then the community, folk who saw something in me that I didn't know existed, or I wouldn't have ever stepped out there to do. But it was because of them that I had to live up to the expectation. And I have to tell you, sometimes it was challenging. And I found myself going back to God and praying a whole lot. And I remember, I told you about my 23rd Psalm, that yea, though I walk through the valley, I shall not, it helped me. It just helped me to know that there was a power and a stronger strength than me. I always heard my grandmother talk about it, who raised me. And she had a faith that nobody would ever believe. But I understood, I began to understand over the years, and I do now more than ever. More than ever. When I say God is good, I'm not just saying it. I mean it. Because I've seen too many mothers who have died of broken hearts, who have become alcoholics, who are now still on drugs because they cannot deal with the pain. I'm telling you, this pain is something I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. It is not anything I want anybody to ever experience.
That's so powerful. And I'm going to ask you one more probing question.
Okay, go ahead.
But I'm going to preach first.
Oh, go ahead.
All right? So I just want to remind you all of something that I've been trying and to teach since I've been here. I've got an expiration date. I'm going to be here for about a year, and then they're going to have a new vital preacher to come in here and take my place.
Oh.
Yeah, but all of us have an expiration date on us, you know.
Well, I'm trying to get mine.
So,
I tell you, they won't let me leave.
I hear that. So the sermon is that the Psalms can be divided into three categories. The category of construction. If you just do right, everything's going to be fine. Yeah. Then the Psalms of deconstruction, like, my God, why have you forsaken me? I've done it right, and you haven't followed through, so you must have forsaken me. And then the Psalms of reconstruction, and Psalm 23 is the perfect example. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Yes. So I just wanted to preach that little thing, that's the way life goes, and the Psalms are there for our lives. Now, let me probe just a little longer. You covered every turn that I imagined, and then there's a turn you didn't talk about the spirituality of it. But I know there's a spirituality of it in your life, and that is when you turned not away from yourself. You still had to understand that there were times where you have to give yourself over to grief. And at the same time, you turned yourself to the public and to others and started ministering to them. Can you talk a little bit about the spirituality of that? Because I think that is so very powerful.
And you know, I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you for mentioning that, because I did. So much so that I forgot me. And I found myself going through a breakdown. But it was years later, and I didn't know it. I was so into everybody else. And I can't tell you what it's like hearing these stories and dealing with families every day. In my years of victim assistance and providing services, we provided services to over 150,000 victims. 150,000 in these years. And you hear these stories about, you have to be called for this work. Like when people come to work with us, I'm not so concerned about the degrees. What I'm more concerned about is the compassion. Do you understand what these folk are going through? This is a terrible time in their lives. They've lost a child, a mother, a father, a sister, a brother, senselessly. We're not talking about somebody that has Parkinson's like me, or someone who has cancer, someone you are expecting that may pass sooner. We're talking about senselessly, just taking the life of another human being for no reason. Because you want to take something from somebody, or because, wait a minute, because somebody made you mad over a card game, or somebody threw hot grease on you, or because they didn't want you, he didn't want you, or she didn't want you, but he or she didn't want you to have somebody else. I mean, just stupid stuff. Really just stupid, senseless. And my work led me there. You know, it was like, you've got to do something. You know, you've got to come out of your space and you've got to share what you've learned here. This was for a reason, and I believe that. I truly believe that my son's death was for a reason. I believe that everyone that loses a person, a loved one, and that I believe that everything that happens in our lives is for a reason. We may not know it at that moment, but God has a way of revealing it to us. I truly believe that. There were times when things were more difficult financially for me and my family than now. But I believe I went through what I went through then to prepare me for now. And everything that we do, even my work is because of my loss of my son. I could not do the work that I do with the passion that I do it with and the commitment that I do it with, and in the years that I've been doing it for, had I not experienced that, or had I not lost, because I really wouldn't be able to feel the pain of the people that I'm serving, the real pain, had I not gone through that. So I know when mothers are screaming in my office, or when I go to, Lord have mercy, when I go to a death scene, and I see a mother's child laying there, and the mother wants to get to the child, but we can't let her get to the child because it would disturb the crime scene. But she doesn't understand that. But I can talk to her. I can tell her. And she understands it's a difference when a mother has been there. And I'm sorry, what's your name? I'm sorry. Oh, my baby. It's a difference. Because they will take it from you. All of my other advocates can talk, but if they haven't been there, they don't hear them. They don't hear them. So that's God's way of telling me I have a purpose for you. And each one of you here, he has a purpose for you. Every one of you. Melita's purpose, and I'm sure she knows it, is to bring more women into this fold that are leaders, to help them become and be the leaders that they are. And she brightens up the whole world, you know, and so she's the shining light. And we love her for it, and we respect her for it. And she has had an impact on my life, you know, because she shows me, through her example, I understand what I'm capable of doing. But this is no easy. It is not easy. You have to have the blessing to do the work that you do. Just like Reverend Ed, how could you be I think about this all the time, like I'm going to my pastor's anniversary today. How could you be a minister all the time? You know, how do they feel like some Sunday mornings they don't want to go to church? I really think about that. Maybe you could answer that for me. But that's the way this work is. God calls you to duty. You know, somebody's going to be a sacrificial lamb along the way. But I think we've had far too many sacrificial lambs.
Yes.
I think we should have a message by now that we've got to do something to stop this carnage of losing so many of our children. And let me tell you, I think you know now, it's not black, it's not white, it's not rich, it's not poor. It can be anybody, anytime. And I said this 30-some years ago. And folk were like, oh, that only happens over there. Oh, it only happens if this happens, if these children are doing this, or if they are doing that. Let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. It can happen to anybody, anytime. So when we reach out, we have to reach out to all children, all families, all communities. When we talk about these guns, it could be any of our children, any of our loved ones.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Three things, and then we've got to go, because I'm going to baptize 7 babies today. I'm so excited about it. It's one of my favorite things to do. I love baptizing. Let's just have a moment of deep breathing right now. Just check in. Where's your brain? Where's your mind? Where's your heart? Where's your spirit? Where's your body? Just be aware, because that's a part of deep listening, is for us to bring awareness to how we've been impacted deeply, and understand that somebody else has been deeply impacted by the story. But we may be impacted differently, because God created us uniquely, differently, and then brought us together in community. So let's just have a moment of silence. Just think about the last 30 minutes and think about where you were most deeply moved. What word or story resonated in your body and mind and spirit? And where is God speaking to you right now? About your life, your call, what you are called to do with your pain, and this big word that our friend Brenda Muhammad used, compassion. What claim does compassion have on you this morning? Thank you. Because, we're not going to have this conversation. And St. Luke's is not going to be a big tent church unless we stop and give ourselves permission and the luxury of feeling and being with someone who is in pain, which is the definition of compassion, is bringing our heart with somebody. Now, we're going to have to leave in 5 minutes. But let's, Brendan, if you'll bring the stick mic, let's see if you want to say anything. Agree, disagree, challenge, more information to this amazing, resourceful, spiritual person we have with us, Brenda. Now, if your heart's beating fast, that means the Holy Spirit has called on you to speak first. So whose heart beating fast? Yes, right here. Very good. Donna goes first. No, I'm fine. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Let me lose mine. There you go. It's wonderful what we are doing, but we're going to even take some more steps in terms of being able to communicate with our people.
Brenda, I have 2 questions.
Yes.
One is, what would you recommend for support of children going through this effort? Because you said there was a lapse not supporting them. And the second question is, what happened to the boy that killed your son?
I think he's out now, and I want to come back to that. But you asked me what would I recommend. There are grief support groups. There is a program for young people that a young lady in Cobb, and I'm so sorry, my young age failed me right now. I can't remember the name of her. It's something kids. But there's a program, and I'll get your information. I'll get that to you. But there's grief support programs for young people specifically designed for them. And then there's an Arts for Healing program that young people that I know exist. Back to the other with the young man. You know, let me tell you, I forgave him. When I got to that point, I knew I was ready. I don't know where he is. I heard that he's out. This has been 30-some years ago now. So, but I pray that if he has children, that he's raising them differently, and that he's using his experience to teach them so that they will not make the same mistake that he made. I believe that if he had the chance over again, I don't think he would do it. I don't think. I want to believe that. But you know what? I got to a point that I realized I used to cry and be heavy and, you know, moan and grieve. But I realized I didn't do this to my child. Somebody else did. So I was not going to carry that weight any longer.
Thank you. There was another question? Yes, Susan. Hold on, coming to you.
I appreciated what you said about going through a phase where you thought, let's just get rid of all guns, and then
Yeah.
coming to a more central view that guns are going to continue to happen but need to be regulated. And I've had this conversation. I'm from South Georgia. I know people who have guns, who hunt, so I'd like your insights, if you have any, into how to engage people past the, oh, well, you know, if you have laws about guns, only outlaws will have guns. I mean, that's as far as I've gotten with people that, you know, might be able to talk to me about it. And I need a little, yes, that's true, but what do you have insights about how to begin a conversation with people who may not be inclined to have that conversation, didn't know they were going to have that conversation today?
I think you do it like you do most controversial issues. You know, you kind of allow them to bring it up. You know, you have your opinion, and if it's someone you can talk to, then, you know, you share it, but you don't want to become combative about it, because I'm going to tell you, people are serious about their guns. They are very, very serious about it. I mean, we talk education, and they think that's the greatest sin of all, you know, is talking education. And we're just saying responsible gun ownership and education, that's all. And they think you're trying to take the guns away. And so that's why you have to be very careful about those conversations.
Thank you so much. So, this happens in every great forum. Oh, yeah, thank you very much. This happens in every great forum, is that we want more, right? So we're going to continue to create forums where we want more. And next week we are going to have more about gun violence prevention and conversations about that, courageous, compassionate conversations. But I would be remiss if, in addition to thanking Brenda, which I'll come back to, if I didn't thank Melita Easters and Ann Kramer, who were helping me put all this together during June and bringing their very thick Rolodexes to the project. And I'm deeply, deeply grateful. I'm deeply grateful that you're here. Tell your friends that we are creating a safe space here to talk about potentially divisive issues, and we're creating a place where the 4 S's are happening, where you can be seen, soothed, safe, and secure in the love of Christ.
That's right.
And the last thing before we thank Brenda is to say she made me think about a book I've just ordered that we may want to study related to this, having to do with the Charleston Church Massacre. And the name of it is Grace Will Lead Us Home. The Charleston Church Massacre and the Hard, Inspiring Journey to Forgiveness. I think all of us could benefit from that. Now, I'm going to have to split and change clothes so that I can baptize. I know you're going to rush Brenda, but remember, she's a church woman and she needs to get to her church this morning. But before we dismiss, let's just simply thank her so very much for being with us.
Well, I want to thank you all. I really want to thank you all for taking this subject on and be the church that you are. The service that you give to this community is just admirable. So thank you so much for taking this subject and bringing it to your parishioners and allowing people to express themselves about it. And thank you for allowing me to share with you. It helps me to empty some things out. And that cry was like the rain that we just had to kind of clean off some of this pollen. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. You're marvelous.
Thank you very, very much. And we'll do some more work together.
Okay, you just let me know.
All right. I'm going to scoot on to church.
Okay. Congratulations on your 6 new parishioners.
Thank you very much.
Hello.
Can I just give you a
Yes, I need it.
All right, we all do. We all do.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.